I am simply bursting with pride to welcome the Verdi baritone of his generation, this American known for his powerful voice, endless breath control, thrilling high notes, and rugged good looks. He hails from Downers Grove, Illinois, that's just outside of Chicago, where his folks ran a dairy farm. He shows good musical talent at an early age, playing several instruments, and he completes his studies at Drake University and Northwestern, thinking he might become a music teacher. He goes on and becomes an apprentice artist at Santa Fe, and he joins Boris Goldovsky's Opera Theater, singing over 300 performances in 12 roles. This then leads to his New York City opera debut as Valentin in Gounod's Faust, and before you know it, within the year, he's making his debut in that same role. He remained with the company over 32 seasons, singing over 650 roles. As a matter of fact, my very first performance I ever saw at the Met was his Scarpia with Gaina Dimitrova, a performance that still rings in my ear to this day. Mr. Sherrill Milnes, thank you, sir, so much for being with us.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Now
I'm glad I'm still around.
Oh, yes. Well, you're doing more than that. We're going to talk more about that. Now, you made your debut in 1965, as we talked about, but within 7 months, first of all, you sang about 7 roles, by the way, in your first 7 months with the company. But at the end of that season, the new Met opens at Lincoln Center. So now you're singing there. Could you tell us, what was any particular recollection of singing on the old Met stage as opposed to the new Met?
Well, first of all, I'm old enough to say Lincoln Center Met is no longer the new Met. I did 19 performances in the old Met, and well, to be totally open here, I can't really remember the difference. 19 performances there and 600 and something, 12 performances in Lincoln Center. Nevertheless, I was the freshman, I was the kid. And those halls had been walked by Leonard Warren and going way back, Caruso and Rosa Poncel and all of the great singers of the past. So I was sitting in their chairs and walking their halls. That was thrilling. And as you said, I sang 7 different roles. I was learning music very fast.
Wow. So can I tell you now, during this, first of all, let me ask you about the production we're going to all see you in just a few minutes. Any particular recollections about the Trovatore with Pavarotti, Eva Marton, and Dolores Zajic, who was just making her debut in that production?
Right. In fact, it was no longer the new production, but it was the first television, and it was a beautiful production. 2 things that the viewer could keep their eye open. First of all, as I walked in, I'm thinking that was a matinee. You may not know that. I think it was a matinee. And so it was live in Europe because it's 6 hours later there. So it was a long walk in. You'll see it in the video. Mm-hmm. I tripped. Well, as all singers, when there's some little flaw that happens, you think it's a huge thing. And there's a little something there. People can watch to see my foot caught or something didn't slide right, whatever it was. And the other thing will be harder to figure out or harder to notice, I think. It was close to Halloween, and I wore one earring that had a little pumpkin on it. And if one looks close, there's one shot, a passing camera shot, that you can see that. I just did it partly as a joke, but also Di Luna at times. They, pirate type, they tended to wear an earring, and so I wore the earring. It wasn't supposed to be a Halloween earring, however. So,
well, we will have to all look for that tonight.
you do that.
Can I ask you this question also? You make your debut at 30, and so in your 30s, you start making some historic recordings with Leontyne Price. I'm thinking of her Aida and the Tosca, the Trovatore, which is my favorite Trovatore of all the recordings, Il Tabarro, as well as with Joan Sutherland.
Yes, indeed.
How did you, I can't even imagine were you nervous? To being this sort of young singer in your 30s, singing with opposite these great legends.
Well, I was lucky in that I had sung with them on stage before the recordings. Okay. So They were friends. Was I younger, or am I younger? A little bit. Yes, we still have Leontine. We don't have Joan. But I had sung with them on stage, which made a huge difference in recording. One was RCA, that was Placido and me, and Leontine, that was the RCA team for about a decade or more.
That's right.
And with Joan, that was London Decca, Decca being the international name. I had sung Puritani and Lucia and a bunch of roles and knew her as well. So it helped my freshman position in there. But the recordings are great, and this Trovatore, it's some of Verdi's greatest, most powerful and emotional music that he wrote in all of the, as they call it, the three periods of Verdi's writing: the early time in the 40s, 50s, which is Trovatore, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, Carlo and Aida and Otello and Falstaff, those great pieces. But Trovatore, he was starting to experiment and find real guts, real emotion, and the audience is going to hear that in Trovatore tonight.
Wonderful. Well, you're recording with the Price. The fourth act duet with Leonora has not been surpassed since. So that's the way I always play with my lectures, Can I ask you this question? You sort of show up at the end of sort of the golden age of singers, all these fine singers who came before, but you caught a lot of them at the tail end. This was a period not known for great acting and visual values, but you end up being this fantastic actor. There's a scene, an interview with Martina Arroyo says you were doing Un Ballo with her. You were her Renato. Right. And this is the scene for those of you who might not know listening. Renato finds out that his wife, something is going on between his wife and his best friend. And she says, you look so menacing that she thought for sure you were going to rip off her wig and strangle her right in front of the audience. How did you become was that something did you work on being such a great actor? Or was that something maybe from Goldovsky maybe?
Well, certainly I learned a lot of that from Boris Goldovsky. I have talked about way back at Drake in my undergraduate years, there was a gentleman in the English department who introduced me to the phrase, now it's no longer a new phrase, subtext. Well, subtext is a huge thing. Now it's talked about, of course, all the time. And that's the first time I'd heard it. We're talking in the 50s here. So when I first went to the Met, sitting with a Corelli or a Bergonzi or a Richard Tucker, I didn't sing with Delmonico, but I would hear something they did that I liked. And I thought to myself, I'm doing it. I'm doing that. And then I would find a place where it worked in my music. So I learned from all of those great singers of the past and many others, too numerous to mention. I was a good sponge.
Ah, very good, very good. Now, could you tell us a little bit now? Of course, I talked earlier about you were thinking you might become a music teacher back in the earlier 60s. But of course, now you're doing something called Voice Experience, as well as with the Savannah Voice Festival. Could you talk a bit about that?
Well, we have two programs, Voice Experience, which is really a training program, and the Savannah Voice Festival, which is more of a performance. And when our singers grow to a point where we think they can be put in the public eye, we put them there, and they're paid so that it's learning, as I did in Tanglewood many years ago, and Boris Goldovsky, all of that. So in a way, I'm paying forward for what the world gave me in a major career. I am hopefully passing some of that on to, we've hundreds and hundreds of singers over the years. This is our 20th anniversary of Voice Experience, and we're very grateful. It's our 8th year in Savannah. Of course, with the pandemic right now, things are a little bit held up, although we are putting together a lot of visual stuff, computer stuff, virtual is what they call it, so that our singers can keep singing. It has to be with camera and in their own environment, but we haven't canceled our program totally, where lots of programs, of course, are doing nothing this summer, and understood, and in some way the safest way. But ours is safe because you're home using the computer, using all the modern technology.
Wonderful. Can I ask my last question? Say you have for any of those young Sherrill Milnes who might be in their early 20s, dreaming of a career in this business. Are there any particular advice you would give a young singer today? I know it's a different world than it was 55 years ago for you, for your debut, but any particular advice you'd give a young singer today?
Well, in general, I tell a young singer in terms of advice, sing anywhere and everywhere. And always, it may sound simplistic, always your best. You never know who might be there. 90% of the time, nice audience, but no one who might hire you. But there's that other 10%, 5%, whatever. You never know who might have walked in the back just to hear a little slice of a performance, and you want to be your best. So always prepare for any performance, whether you're paid or not, in your best manner and give it your best shot. Careers are made by many fine performances, not one.
Wow. Well, Mr. Sherrill Milnes, my Christmas has come early chatting with you today. Thank you so much. And we can't wait for this performance tonight.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great.